Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunatu Sahavidyam Karavati Tejasvina Vadhidamastu Mavi Dvishavadi. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om. Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmasvarupini avatarvaristhaya ramakrishnaya te namaha. Sudismriti purananam alayam karunalayam namami bhagavat padam shankaram lokashankaram. We are continuing the discussion dealing with this the 7 questions that we remember. The whole discussion. Ko nama vanta kadamesha agataha katham padishthasi katham vimokshaha koso anatma paramakka atma tayor viveka prathamedat uchyata. So what is an atman, what is atman, and how to get established in the consciousness of atman. Now, in the Vivekachudamani, you find a very elaborate discussion of our spiritual journey along the path of the 4 great statements called Mahavakyas. So we have to keep in mind that the whole of Vedic philosophical literature could be condensed into 4 important statements and discussions around these 4 important statements. These statements are called Mahavakyas. Mahavakya means the great statement. It's very interesting. On the one hand, they contain the philosophical, the spiritual significance condensed in these 4 statements. On the other hand, it also gives the picture of our spiritual journey. The 4 statements are TATTVAMASI, Ayam Atma Brahma, Prajnanam Brahma, and Aham Brahmasmi in Sanskrit. So when I explain in English, you will understand why it is called the picture, the graphic description of the human journey in spiritual life. The first one is TATTVAMASI. That's what we are going to discuss. It's a very important part of this text, because we have to condense the essence of these 485 verses into 9-hour discussion, So there is always this problem of time. But anyway, I shall give it in a brief outline. I shall try to give a brief picture of this. TATTVAMASI is being described here. TATTVAMASI. These are 3 words which together constitute TATTVAMASI. Asi is the joining word. Tat is literally means that. Tva means you. Often in biblical old style they put that thou art. This way. Now, as a statement, it may not mean much unless we give a philosophical analysis of this statement. So, tat or that here means the attributeless Brahman, the all-pervading absolute reality expressing itself in a conditioned form at the macro level. It means in the universal dimension. Tvam is its micro dimension at the individual level. Let us say God, or the absolute reality perceived as the creator of this universe. See, when we look at the absolute reality from the empirical point of view, you cannot really conceive of an attributeless, nameless, formless, spiritual ideal Brahman. So we can only understand through the prism of relativity, and relativity's time, space and causation is relativity. So when we look at the absolute reality through the prism of relativity, or when we interpret the absolute through the prism of the infinite, of the finite, then we call him the creator God or Ishvara in Sanskrit. Now, the same Ishvara is present in all of us, but doesn't mean that an individual human being is God or Ishvara. What it means is that Ishvara in essence is immanent, is present in the individual human being, embodied in this embodied human being which expresses itself through this body-mind complex. Now, that means, in essence, it means Ishvara is man or individual or woman. It really doesn't make any sense. Absolutely. Often Vedanta is terribly misunderstood and misinterpreted. But Vedanta tells you, I am God. You are God. Everyone is God. It's a very childish, ridiculous way of reductionism in its most perverted sense. What Vedanta tells you is the essence of the absolute reality expressing itself as God is also present in you as the immanent reality. The divine spark is all-pervading, it is also immanent. It is present in all of us as an indweller. So, in Vedantic hermeneutics, means the interpretation of scriptures, they use different lakshanas. Lakshanas means the method of finding the implication or implied meaning, not literal meaning. So, Jahalakshana, Ajahalakshana, Akhajalakshana, there are different ways of interpreting this. I am not going to those details. What it means is, the teacher in this particular text tells you that once you remove this body-mind complex obsession from us, once we look upon what actually I am, what constitutes the real I, apart from the body-mind complex, then it is the divine reality present, and which we call Atman or the soul, which is the indweller present in all of us. And the same reality is present everywhere as the omnipresent reality. So at the macro level, the universal spiritual consciousness is the same as the micro dimension of the same reality as the individual soul. So the reality, the absolute reality you are seeking is actually yourself. The journey ends within ourselves. That's why in the Bhagavata Purana, one of the instructions given by Yajnavalkya is Yat Sakshat Aparokshat Brahma. See, Pratyaksha is direct, what we perceive with the mind and senses called Pratyaksha. Its opposite is Paroksha, indirect or remote. Atman is neither direct because it cannot be seen through eyes and cannot be perceived by the mind. It is not indirect because it is not so far away, it is our own real self. Atman is not the opposite of Pratyaksha. In Sanskrit, when you use the word, when we add the A before a consonant, it becomes the opposite. When you add an before a vowel, it becomes the opposite. Ishtam, anishtam, and plus ishtam is anishtam. A plus paroksha is aparoksha, the opposite of paroksha. Apratyaksha means the opposite of pratyaksha. So, Brahman is not the opposite of the direct, because the opposite of direct should be far away from us, it should be remote, it should be indirect. No, Atman is our own real self. But Atman cannot be seen, so you cannot call it direct either. So what you call aparoksha, it is non-remote, non-indirect. In reality, it is non-indirect, it is non-remote. See, something like if we call, say, Finland or Iceland is remote, distant from you, far away from you. This book is direct, it is close to you, you can see that. Atman cannot be seen as I see this book. Atman is not far because he is our own real self. So what is Atman? Atman is non-indirect, it is non-remote. So yes, Sakshat Aparokshat Brahma. In the Vivekachudamani, Shankaracharya writes a long commentary on this. Now this idea is explained most elaborately in one of the most prominent Upanishads, comes from Samaveda. It's called Chandogya Upanishad. In Chandogya Upanishad, in the 6th chapter, this is given a very graphic description in the form of a dialogue between a father and his son. The teacher is the father, the son is the student. Uddalaga is the father's name and Swetaketu is the son's name. This 6th chapter in Chandogya has got 16 Brahmanas, 16 sections. From 8 to 16th, in 9 Brahmanas, this is being described. First, the teacher tells his son, TATTVAMASI is an instruction, but the son doesn't understand. Because if somebody tells you are God or you are that, what does it mean? Then the teacher comes down, tells him, see, once you can think of yourself as something beyond, something that goes beyond the body, the intellect, the mind, the thoughts, the ideas, emotions and attitudes. If you can think of yourself as something that transcends all these, then there is something in you which cannot be explained, which can only be experienced as present in all of us as the immanent Antaryami, as the absolute reality. So, Uddalaga repeats his instruction 8 times. First he gives an instruction, then he repeats, and it ends with the 16th Brahmana, 16th section of the chapter ends with Swetaketu's experience. His son realizes, as he meditates, as he practices, through different illustrations, he is convinced of the fact, Aidadatmamidam sarvam tasatyam sa atma tattvamasi Swetaketu. O Swetaketu, that Atman is the absolute reality, which is your own self, your own real entity, real soul, Atman, it is yourself. The Swetaketu asks for more instruction, more examples, and the father goes on giving a number of illustrations. So, 8 drishtantas, 8 illustrations, 8 examples, and the first instruction total 9 times this is repeated, TATTVAMASI. So, this idea is being explained in this text Vivekachudamani by the teacher. And then the teacher tells the student, look here. Now, when we first hear a great spiritual idea, it strikes us only as an idea or a concept. It doesn't go very deep. And that idea can be disturbed when another person gives you a contrary idea. An intellectual preposition can always be countered by a counter intellectual preposition. So how do you travel from concept to experience? That journey from concept to experience, from instruction to experience, is portrayed in these 4 Mahavakyas. So the first one is called Upadesha Vakya, the statement of instruction. TATTVAMASI is Upadesha, means instruction, teaching. So after listening to this, the student should contemplate on what he hears. It's called Mananam. Sravanartha. Manana means contemplating on the inner essence, the meaning of what you hear. Even in ordinary academic life, an idea doesn't register in our mind unless we can contemplate on that idea after we have finished listening to that idea. Listening alone doesn't register unless people with great memory, they listen, but in their case, this contemplation and listening happen simultaneously. That's why what you hear is registered in the memory system. But that's possible only what we normally can analyze at the empirical level. Non-empirical or trans-empirical ideas register themselves in our mental system only when we travel backward and contemplate and meditate on the meaning of what we hear. It is called anusandhanam. Anusandhana, anu means, going one after another. you chasing, you following, you are practicing again and again, repetition, contemplating, thinking on what we hear. And then we get conviction. So these two processes, contemplating, concentrating the meaning and internalizing what we hear, and getting fully convinced internally, this happens when we practice the second and third Mahavakyas, that is Ayam Atma Brahma and Prajnanam Brahma. So Ayam Atma Brahma, Prajnanam Brahma. Ayam Atma Brahma is a Mahavakya in the Atharva Veda, it comes to the Mandukya Upanishad. Prajnanam Brahma comes to the Rig Veda, it is in Aitareya Upanishad. TATTVAMASI is from Chandogya. And at the last stage, the journey doesn't end with conviction. The journey doesn't end with contemplation. The journey ends with experience. So experience is reached when you reach the fourth Mahavakya, Aham Brahmasmi, which comes in the Yajurveda, in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. So you can find these four Mahavakyas which depict the human journey, evolution, from concept to experience, from discerning to internalization or experience. It is portrayed in these four Mahavakyas as TATTVAMASI, instruction. Then Ayamatma Brahma and Prajnanam Brahma, ending with internal experience. It becomes a reality for you. How does it become a reality for you? It depends upon our own spiritual fitness. You find in Sri Ramakrishna's life, when Totabari gave him this instruction, it expressed itself as an experience in Sri Ramakrishna's mind. So immediately he went into Samadhi. The same experience is depicted in the life of Shankaracharya when he learned from his teacher Govinda Bhagavapada, immediately became an experience. And he was a little boy of maybe 7-year-old at that time, and he started writing books. He had already mastered all the Shastras and finished all the writings before he reached the 16th year. So Ashtame Chandro Vedan Dwadase Sarvashastravid Shodase Kritavan Bhashim Dvatrim Se Gunirabhyagat. So by 16th year he had finished all the books which today old fellows, scholars take their whole lifetime to learn and understand intellectually. And for the last 12,000 years this has been going. Now, in Sri Ramakrishna's case you find, when the instruction came, it registered as an experience, not as a concept. But that doesn't happen to everyone. So there are two ways of interpreting the effect of these statements. For ordinary spiritual seekers, you should listen and receive it as a concept or as an idea. And then you must practice contemplation, meditation. We may forget, again you should come back to it. So Vikshipta Mana, yesterday we mentioned pendulum moving from one end to the other end. Suddenly it was a wonderful idea, again we forget it. So what happens is, continuously contemplating, meditating the meaning of the statement helps us to internalize and to reach the experience dimension of this great idea. It depends upon our own intensity. In the case of Sri Ramakrishna, his whole mind was pure. So when the instruction came, it immediately came an experience called Shabda Aparokshvada, where if a person is a spiritual seeker, is already endowed with all the disciplines, like the discrimination between the real and unreal, renunciation, the sense control, mind control, and thirst for liberation, sadhana chatushtayam, we explained this. Nitya Nitya Vastu Viveka, then Ikamutra Phala Bhoga Viraga, Samadhi Sarka Sambhati, Mumukshutvam. Through these spiritual qualifications, when we become really fit for the highest realization, then just listening immediately becomes, it connects with us. Well, when I was teaching in India, in the traditional Gurukulas, I had to give an example. So the example I used to give was this. Suppose you lose something very precious in your life, money or whatever, your years earnings, Let's say in American context, let's say passbook or social security, or maybe credit card, let's say. That's something which will immediately register. So, let us say you lose your credit card and you have maybe $500,000 in that credit card, level. I mean the credit level. And then immediately you'll be looking for it. And if you're walking along the street looking for a credit card or maybe passport or identification ID card, if you find something lying on the floor which resembles the credit card or passport, you won't sit and think, what is this? Straight away you would pounce upon it and put it in your pocket. So when you see it, what it is immediately becomes obvious to you. Why? Because when you're looking for it, searching for it, walking the street, your whole mind was emptied of all other thoughts. Mind was only fully focused on the credit card. You'll be seeing the credit card on your mind, mental horizon, or passport, whatever you have lost. So when you see it lying on the floor, on the street, immediately strikes you, that's the thing I'm looking for. So Sri Ramakrishna's mind was emptied of every other vritti. So when the Upadesha came from Totapuri, it became an experience. Whatever we are intensely focusing on, it becomes a matter of experience to us. If it is vague, it doesn't help us. So as a concept, it's not yours. It becomes yours only as an experience. If it's a concept, another person can say, oh, Brahma, all this absolute rubbish, and your mind will be disturbed. If you're convinced, or if Vedanta is just a concept or an idea, it doesn't go very deep. An atheist, somebody full of skepticism, disruptive tendencies, who may shake your convictions, who may poison your mind, can take away from you that conviction, that idea. But if that idea has become an experience, then nobody can shake your conviction. So, that's why the text tells you, Vedanta is not a concept. It is not an idea. It's not an intellectual preposition. It becomes a reality only when we experience this. But, if we approach this concept with a sense of sanctity, with a sense of conviction, well, this is to be experienced, this is something of vital importance in our life, then it cannot be easily shaken. And that particular quality with which you accept a concept is called Shraddha in Sanskrit language. That means even if a conviction, a Vedantic idea of Advaitic idea may not have become an experience to many students. But still, if you approach that concept, the theory, the doctrine, with the full conviction that this is something to be internalized, this is something to be experienced, this is the ultimate solution for the worldly bondage, as the teacher instructs again and again. With that sense of sanctity and a sense of sacredness, if we approach this concept, then it cannot be shaken. So that's why, and this helps you in practicing mananam, contemplation, and nididhyasana finally becomes an experience. Now, the glory of this text is, it's along with the highest philosophy, it also describes some very, very interesting possible dangers along the path. It's a very practical text, this Vivekachudamani. So, those who have got a text can look at the 321, 22, 23, all these verses. First, just look at the verse number 321. So it tells you, Drishyam Pratidam Pravilapayan Swayam Sanmatrapmanadhanam Vibhavayan Samahidasan Behirandiram Va Kalam Nayet thasiti karma bendhe. The meaning is this. So go on contemplating on the vanishing nature of these external sensual objects and meditating on the reality with the embodiment of bliss. We should try to spend our time on this contemplation, and then this contemplation can be external contemplation and internal contemplation. External contemplation is elimination of outside objects as not being Atman. So whenever we experience things in the empirical world, which may create obstructions and may disruptions, disturbances, we can dismiss them, we can just wish them away. Well, these are all unclear. It can be a very good psychological tool for psychological counseling. Very often, the problems of anxiety, depression, many of the phobias, many of the undesirable mental experiences are due to one single problem. The problem is we interpret and we think these are all permanent. So, people who lose sleep over dose of money or wealth, if they can imagine, well, changeability is natural to all these things, which is a very obvious fact. You don't have to be a philosopher to be aware of the changing nature of all these empirical experiences. You go on doing something good for others, that person turns out to be ungrateful to you. So that may be a shocking experience. But then that person or his attitudes, these are all absolute realities. It's natural. Human beings, human emotions, human reactions are inherently of a changeable quality. Changeability is natural. They're all transient, is natural to human emotions, feelings, and human relations. It doesn't mean that we must be cold or anything. But whenever an unpleasant experience is about to shock us, will have a damaging effect on our mind, then we can dismiss, oh, this is natural. And it's a fact. It is not that you are not creating an artificial mental conviction. You are actually referring to a reality, a real fact, which everyone understands. So, looking upon all these empirical things as non-Atman, as non-absolute, as something subject to changes by the very nature, that itself is one way of connecting with the Advaita truth. Again, another way is internal concentration. I am not this body, I am not mind, I am not intellect. Shivananda Rupa, Shivoham, Shankaracharya says. After all, very often the problems are due to our own wrong interpretation of how should that I am nothing but this body. I am nothing but this mind. I am nothing but this intellect. I am nothing but this being who is happy when I get money or unhappy when I lose it. But I am something other than this mind, intellect or anything. This is another way of contemplation. So one kind of contemplation is directed towards dismissing all non-Atman objective experiences as unreal, as changeable. Another one is elevating our own awareness from gross to subtle. I am not this body, I am something beyond all this. This is one. These are all very, very practical. So you find this book contains the highest philosophy and the highest pragmatism. But still, there will be problems. That problem is technically called pramada. Pramada can be interpreted as negligence, a casual, indifferent outlook towards these things. I think the opposite of Sattva. See, spiritual progress often depends upon the sense of intensity, the sense of sacredness, the sanctity with which we approach spiritual ideas. That's how we travel from conviction to experience. In the beginning, this conviction may be very superficial. At that stage, wrong associations are very dangerous. Because when the conviction is superficial, pramada, negligence is always a possibility. At that time, wrong association can be potassium cyanide. Because wrong association can shake the very foundations of our faith, can cause enormous damage to our mind, intellect and life. So, one important point, remember, is the necessity to be in the company of people whose association will help you to deepen the conviction, to strengthen the conviction. And one way to strengthen conviction is a sense of sanctity and sacredness. In fact, we all have a sense of sanctity and sacredness. People who take huge loans from banks or from other agencies and go to medical university, medical school. They are very particular. They should study, they should work very hard. Indian universities where often education is over-subsidized, where government provides everything, people agitate, students agitate. You don't come across those events in this country, because here by the time you come out to medical college you will be huge debts. It's a matter of survival. So very often we value something on the basis of what we pay for it. That's an important thing. The value we approach, with which the value that we attach to something is in direct proportion to the price we pay for it. The price could be in any way. So, if you look upon spiritual idea with a sense of superficial attitude, then it doesn't go very deep. So, it should be approached with a sense of intensity and sanctity and sacredness. Sri Ramakrishna uses one word in Bengali language, it's a Sanskrit word actually, Vyakulata, which actually incorporates all these ideas: sincerity, honesty, intensity, shraddha, sense of sanctity, sacredness, all that. And Sri Ramakrishna says everything depends upon that. So, if we don't have this shraddha, sanctity, then there is a great danger. That's what Shankaracharya is going to discuss now. And that is a very, very interesting, very famous verse, because the magic of harmonizing sense and sound can be seen in this. The verse is talking about how a football, if you, suppose you is the top of the building and there is a long staircase and you drop the ball from your hands and the staircase reaches down the ground floor, the ball will not stop rolling unless it hits the ground floor. Oh, if we don't have shraddha or sanctity or sacredness, then any time, any moment, we may lose our connection with Vedanta idea. So the teacher here is insisting on the need to be always in a state of awareness. This is the meaning of awareness mentioned in the Buddhist meditative techniques from a different angle, of course. Lekshachudam ched yadi chittamishat bahirmukham san nibade tadastataha pramadada pratyudakeliga kantuga sobana bantu padido yatha tatha. So, lekshachudam, so if we are not very careful, we may lose our connection with the goal, with the purpose. So, anytime this could happen due to carelessness, this deviation of mind, it doesn't stop. The ball doesn't stop falling when it reaches the step just below. It goes all the way. So that is why sannipatet, it will go on falling, tatastataha, from step to step. If the ball is dropped, from the top floor, from the top of the ladder or the staircase, it has to reach the bottom. Before that, it doesn't stop. So very often, if you lose connection due to lack of a sense of sanctity, sacredness, or due to negligence, or due to careless, superficial attitude, then what happens? Once we lose connection, then we have to start this game all over again. Well, there is a very interesting story, and the stories come from another text. It comes from the Bhagavata Purana. It's a very, very graphic illustration of what is described here. I mean, the ball falling continuously down like a continuous dropping of the football, and it may have fallen from our hands inadvertently, but still it doesn't stop with the first step. So the story is that of an emperor, Jada Bharata. Jada means lifeless, without energy, without life. Bharata is the name of a king. So he was a mighty emperor, and it is believed that the reason, India got the name from one of these two Bharatas. One was the Bharata king associated with Dushyanta's story, Abhigyana Shagunana, Kalidasa's famous play. Another one is this Jada Bharata. It's a mighty, big philosophical seeker and also an emperor. He, when he became old, he did what kings used to do in those days. He declared his eldest son as the heir apparent, and he was made the successor. Then he left the palace, the kingdom, all the comforts, everything behind, and went to the forest. And he built a small hut on the bank of a river in the forest. As the story goes. And he sat there and started practicing meditation, reading scriptures and contemplation. For many decades, he became very old. Around that time, something happened. A female deer was being chased by a lion, and as it ran, it just jumped across the river, the small stream. In the process, the mother deer died as she hit the other bank of the stream, and the little baby deer, which is born at that time, it fell into the stream and it started floating in the water. So the compassionate king, out of his compassion, he jumped into the stream and saved the life of the baby deer. Now, and this baby deer, it started growing up in the hermitage, where he was practicing meditation, contemplation, japa, reading scriptures, and so on. Now it was about the time for him to leave his body. It was about time for death. So what happened in the process was, he forgot the purpose for which he left his own children in the palace. And he was a responsible king. He had children and grandchildren. He left them all in the palace and left for the forest and built this hut, hermitage, and lived there. But he became so much attached to the little baby deer. Nothing wrong in having compassion. But even in showing compassion, it is important to see that you don't lose sight of your ultimate supreme spiritual goal. Otherwise, this chain of compassion or love can also have the same binding effect as the chain of gold or chain of iron. The binding effect is the same. It can take your freedom away from you. So what happened when this baby deer was hanging around? The old man who was about to breathe his last, he looked at the little baby deer And he was worried, oh, what will happen to this little creature when I die? Some wild animals may come and kill it. It's a terrible thing. So he could not think of God or his ultimate spiritual goal. Instead of that, he was contemplating on the animal. So in the next life, he was born as an animal. But then what he had done in this life, his meditation, his contemplation, his renunciation of his kingdom and palace, that did not leave him. So when he was born as a deer in the next life, he continued living in the same hermitage. He did not leave the hermitage. The animal remembered its previous life, but still it had an animal body. So it died. After some years, the animal, its lifespan was over. It died. So as an animal, it was thinking of his past life. What is the past life? The great sage who had renounced his kingdom, his palace, and came to the forest, built a hermitage, lived there as a contemplative sage. That samskaras, those impressions, that still retained in the mental system. So frequently when you find people who may be practicing what we may call non-spiritual or secular professions, having some helplessly being attached to some spiritual ideas which may make them look a bit odd, is because the accumulated memories are coming back to the surface of the mind, forcing them, prompting them to connect with some spiritual ideas, spiritual practices which they may have performed in previous life, which suddenly come to the mind and force you to reconnect with these old samskaras. So when this deer passed away, it passed away breathing its last, meditating on God. So the king passed away meditating on the deer, and the deer passed away meditating on God. That's because the king had left his kingdom to become a sage. His goal was to meditate on God. But there was this called, the pramada is mentioned here. Lakshachudam ched yadi chittamishat. So, mind straying away from the supreme goal of spiritual life. So what happened? It reached all the way to being born as an animal, but still it did not lose everything, but still it caused a delay in the spiritual journey of the soul. So frequently this verse is chanted in a way that resembles the hitting of the ball each step till it reaches the rock bottom. So that's how the meter is formulated by the great poet Shankaracharya. Now this discussion continues. There are some detailed analysis of how this happens, how this deviation happens. So, Vishayeshu avisacheda sankalpayati tadgunan samyak sankalpanatnama kama pumsak pravartayan tada surupa vibhramshu vibhrashtastu padatyatha padidasya vinanasham punarnaloha yikshati. So sankalpam varjye tasma sarvanarthasya karanam. So this is the instruction. Maybe I shall explain this. So what happens? How does this deviation happen? First, the mind gets attached to sense objects. Now we have to remember, it's not because mind is always turned towards sense objects that the mind gets attached to them. Mind frequently gets attached to what is available around it. So both are right. So there are two ways of interpreting. Mind is looking for sense objects. This happens to people who are inherently, strongly worldly minded. Even in spiritual places, they will be looking for sense objects. Even in spiritual places, their mind will be polluted. That is a kind of extreme example. There are others who are slightly above this level. They get attached to sense objects because they are the things available around them. So in the Gita you find, in the second chapter, Lord Krishna makes this point. Sangas Shubhajayade, Sangas Sankalpegama, Kama Krodho Bijayade, Krodha Bhavati Sammoga. Like that. So Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsaka Sangaste Shubhajayade. So because we meditate or you contemplate, you think of sense objects, so mind gets attached to sense objects. That's one thing. Mind sometimes gets attached to sense objects because sense objects are the only things available around them. Both ways it could happen. What happens is, first mind gets attached to sense objects and then contemplates, elaborates on those things. And this contemplation on sense objects gets the mind linked to sense objects, and then the mind tries to achieve these objects, and that prompts a person to action directed towards obtaining those sense objects. And when you get them, you become completely forgetful of everything else. If you don't get them, you become bitter. So both ways, mind goes on hitting each step below till it reaches rock bottom. The one important point that the poet emphasizes here is the mind doesn't stop with hitting the step just below the top. It has reached the rock bottom. Well, before the ball hits the rock bottom, after it has fallen from your hands when you are standing at the top of the terrace. Still, if there are some obstructions, if somebody is walking, climbing up the steps and he stops the ball with the left hand, it doesn't stop there. Sorry, it stops there. It doesn't fall beyond that particular step. A teacher or a book or an idea can help you from reaching the rock bottom. That also Shankaracharya accommodates. So, before hitting the rock bottom, if another person is walking up the staircase and he finds his ball falling, it corresponds to human mind. So, connecting with those spiritual ideas at some stage or other is like preventing the ball from continuing its downward movement, and you prevent the ball from hitting the rock bottom. This could happen, and this happens when we connect ourselves somehow or other, mentally, intellectually, whatever way possible, to spiritual idea. So connecting with spiritual idea is possible not only intellectually, even if you do some service, some good service for a spiritual entity, whatever that entity may be, that's one way of generating spiritual wealth. And spiritual wealth means vrittis, vasanas and samskaras, which may prevent the ball from hitting the ground, which may prevent our mind from hitting the rock bottom. That's one other way of interpreting. So the great author himself, Shankaracharya, elsewhere in the commentaries, gives a beautiful analysis of the dynamics of prarabdha. It is one of the most unique things. You find it, maybe the most recent example, the telling illustration you find in Holy Mother's life. So Holy Mother tells you that if you pray, if you meditate, if you do spiritual practices, then if you are destined to be bitten by a cobra, you may be bitten by a water snake. Or if you are destined to be bitten by a water snake, you may be bitten by an ant or a mosquito. So the intensity of the consequences of the sufferings will be drastically reduced to almost zero level if a person undertakes some kinds of spiritual practices. So, is one way of stopping the ball from hitting rock bottom. Otherwise, the ball will not stop till it reaches the rock bottom. So, prarabdha, in Sanskrit, prakashena arabdha means something which has started already, which has started manifesting. This body, our intellect, our mind, our attitudes, these are all results of the operation of prarabdha karma. Means that part of the karmas, samskaras, or vrittis, or impressions which are directly involved in the present life of ours. We are born in a particular family, in a particular kind of circumstances. All technically, according to Vedanta, is the result of the operation of prarabdha karma. That part of the karmas which are already started manifesting and responsible for the present embodiment. The other part which has not started manifesting is called sanjita karma, which is accumulated, which has not started manifesting. Now, it is sometimes compared to an arrow that has left the archer's bow. The archer has no control over it, but somebody else can control. If a strong wind blows, the flight of the arrow can be deflected. The flight of the arrow doesn't have to hit the target. It has only to extinguish its velocity. The arrow doesn't have to hit the target. The arrow somehow has to exhaust its velocity, its momentum. And this could happen if the strong wind blows, or some object appears before the arrow and the target towards which is flying. So, what are these factors which help us in extinguishing the flight of the arrow? The momentum, the speed. Good actions, good thoughts, good ideas, good samskaras, good associations. Anything that generates spiritually healthy samskaras will act as a help in spiritual life. That's what Holy Mother says, and that is depicted in the Shankaracharya's commentary. The new version, especially comes in the Vartika of Suresha. It's a technical work. So now the author continues, Ada pramada na parosti murtihu. So he says negligence, indifference, casual attitude, an attitude without a sense of sanctity and sacredness to spiritual ideas is death. The word is a strong language. He says death. There is no greater death, greater enemy to spiritual life than approaching spiritual ideas without a sense of sanctity and sacredness. And how does it happen? How do we lose a sense of sanctity and sacredness? So, it is expressed in many other scriptures, in the Yoga Sutra, in the Bhagavata Purana, and so on. You find Ishwari tatathineshu bariseshu dikshasuja prema maitri kripa upeksha yakaro disamadhyamaka. In the Bhagavata Purana, you don't find in this book Nimi-Navayogi-Samvada, a dialogue between 9 great philosopher saints, and a philosopher king. It's an interesting dialogue in the 11th book of Bhagavata Purana, Ekadasa Skandha. I gave a series of talks on this subject somewhere, maybe some years back, 2 years back. Okay, now the subject is this. A king puts 9 questions to a group of sages who happen to visit him in his palace. The sages are 9 in number. So, to each of these sages, the king puts one question. Kavir Antariksha Prabhuddha Pipalayana Avid Ho Trodhuminas Chamasat Karabhajana. This is a list I which you need not bother about now. One important question was, what's the nature of a true devotee of God? What's the nature of a true spiritual seeker? First, the sage Antariksha tells the king, the greatest devotee of God is one who sees the presence of God outside the place of worship, who can think of God even when he is not practicing spiritual rituals. The one who sees God in everyone and sees everyone, everything in God. So sarva bhudeshu yapashyet bhagavad bhavam atmanaha bhudani bhagavati atmani esha bhagavadottamaha. The one who sees the presence of God everywhere and sees the presence of everyone, everything in God, is the highest devotee. It is a kind of Advaitic, non-dualistic experience. This should be now left behind. What about the ordinary spiritual seekers? That's what we are concerned with. And that's what Vivekachudamani is talking about right now. So how to avoid pramada, how to avoid negligence, how to avoid the mind falling like a ball, hitting every step of the ladder, eventually reaching the top floor, the bottom level of the building, hitting the rock bottom. How to avoid the problem of mind suddenly being caught or trapped in negativity by wrong association, by having to talk with wrong people, having to work with wrong people, having to be surrounded or to live surrounded by spiritually unhelpful circumstances. So there the sage says, there are 4 attitudes that you can assume to live in this world. And that will help you to prevent this deviation. The ball, that's our mind, from deviating, from falling from our hands, eventually hitting every step till it reaches the bottom. The attitudes are this. You should have devotion to God, and you should have a friendly feeling towards other fellow spiritual seekers, and you should have compassion towards those who are interested in spiritual life, and you should be able to explain to them. So you may meet all these people. So you may meet people who are fellow spiritual seekers, who may also talk to us, where are you going, what kind of retreat it is, what you discuss there, we'll be interested. So discuss with them. That's one way of enriching ourselves spiritually. And there are people who may not be aware of these things. You should be able to explain to them. After compassion. Not compassion that the person is inferior, but rather it's a part of our own spiritual sadhana. Discussion of spiritual subjects itself is a spiritual practice. Because when we discuss with other spiritual topics, our mind gets colored by the ideas we are expounding, we are discussing. Mind is traveling along with these ideas. So that influences mind in a very positive manner. But what about those who may pour cold water on whatever you're doing? Oh, these are all good for nothing. Why would these are all absolute trash. What about how do you deal with them? You cannot fight with them, because fighting or quarreling with them also will get you connected to them. And you cannot be friendly with them. That also is a much worse problem. So what you should do, listen to them. Mentally, these are all absolute. These fellows are natural. Every age is produces. Even Sri Ramakrishna, the incarnation, he had to put up with Hazra. Hazra was sitting right in front of his room. And he looked more of a Paramahamsa than Sri Ramakrishna himself. Because he was wearing a bigger Rudraksha, maybe bigger Vibhuti, a bigger longer beard perhaps. and he was also a very articulate fellow who knew how to play to the gallery. When he found some rich people coming, he tried to be more impressive, and he will ask them to come there and listen to him rather than to Sri Ramakrishna. So Sri Ramakrishna did not drive him out. That is greatness. He said, oh, let him also stay there. We need some, if the play is without a villain, you won't spend money and buy a ticket and see the play. If you are watching a drama, but the hero is all very wonderful, and everything you can determine. If there is a villain, some comedians, and they also play some minor roles, then only you will be anxious how it is all going to end. Then only you will feel like spending money to buy a ticket. So Sri Ramakrishna says this play needs all sorts of things. So he accommodated Hazara also. Well, this is from that context. But what the sage tells is the same thing, but he says, so you should develop a kind of inner filtering mechanism. So mind should automatically filter out all unhelpful, spiritually undesirable, unhelpful ideas. As soon as they come to your mind, you should have an automatic filtering mechanism that filters out all the poisonous ideas coming from outside sources. So we should not antagonize them, because that will also get you connected to them, and that also can influence your mind. And you should not befriend them. That could be a much worse problem. So what you should do, mentally we must remain indifferent. So prema, maitri, kripa, upeksha is a very strong armor plate, and if we have that, and we can live in this world, we can interact with any kind of persons, still keep intact our own spiritual journey. That's the idea behind. So that's one way of wrong ideas emerging the mind and taking possession of the mind. So that's why Sankalpam Varjayet. We must avoid all undesirable tendencies, ideas, concepts coming from anyone. So now we will have interaction for half an hour, and then of course we will we have about 25 minutes. Please.
If this is too off the topic, just let me know. I've heard it, you mentioned a phrase several times,
Yeah.
and it's also mentioned in Hindustani classical music.
Yeah.
Rag is that which colors the mind. And you've used that
Oh,
phrase,
please,
that
yeah.
which colors the
Yeah.
mind.
I will tell you.
What does that mean exactly?
Remember, you see, raga in music is totally different from what the word means in philosophy. Raga is rhythm. Any of the Indian music, raga is rhythm, melody. It is sapta raga, rhythms and melodies. It is part of the grammar of Hindustani. Not only Hindustani, Indian classical music. Hindustani, North Indian, South Indian, all. Raga, I am not a musician,
No,
So, but I know this much.
Yeah.
Raga is the melody. It is associated with the structure of singing music. But the word used here is raga means attachment, obsessive attachment to something. That's the meaning of raga in Vedanta philosophy. Its opposite is aversion. Hate, raga, dvesha. Often these are used in pairs. Raga means excessive, obsessive attachment, liking for something. Even if you know that it is not good, still your mind is attached to something. That is called raga. Its opposite is dvesha, means extreme aversion, irrational hatred or aversion towards something, hostility towards something. Totally different. Please remember, it's totally different.
But Swamiji, that phraseology, that which colors the mind, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, it is this extreme attachment, extreme obsessive liking for certain things, to the point of being enslaved by it. It is that which binds you. It is an enemy of spiritual life. The other one is, it has nothing to do with spiritual life at all. It is part of the music. When you learn music, they teach you different ragas, different melodies, different beat. It's totally different. Yeah, please remember, don't confuse one with the other. Raga in music is totally different from raga as it is understood in Vedanta. Raga in Vedanta means extreme liking, obsessive attachment to something, so that you are enslaved by your own liking for certain things, though you know it is not good for you. Its opposite is aversion, hostility, hostile feeling to something, aversion to something, the opposite. It is the way mind is bound. The other raga music is totally different. Listen.
But Swamiji, I appreciate your making that
Yeah.
clarification, but the question I'm asking you is a little different.
Yeah.
I'm asking you about this phrase, coloring the mind.
Coloring the mind is used only in the context of Vedantic context.
Well, what does it mean exactly?
Oh, that means, see,
That's the
when you are attached to certain things, then the mind assumes that form. Your attachment actually can be negative or positive. When a person is always full of aversion to certain things, then also his mind goes on thinking of. When a person is as a hatred, angry with somebody, that person's image, memory will poison your mind. And again, when you are extremely attached to certain things, that also will color and influence your mind. Mind will be colored by both in equal manner. So that's why a spiritual seeker should try to transcend both, go beyond both. Raga and Dvesha both equally color and influence our mind.
So coloring the mind, that phrase means the mind is completely absorbed in something.
Yeah, to
whatever it is.
something positive and negative. Yeah. That's, yeah. Yeah.
Swami, when you ended the lecture, you mentioned sort of 5 protective ideas,
Yeah.
the last of which was prema.
Yeah.
Can you go into that a little bit more?
Yeah. First one is a devotion to God, devotion to spiritual ideas. That should be very strong in our mind. Second one, how do we interact with people with different life situations in this context? Those who are interested in these spiritual ideas, as we are interested, we should try to associate with them, we should discuss with them, because discussion among devotees, discussion among fellow spiritual seekers is very helpful for everyone. Because as we discuss our ideas that spiritual ideas will go deeper into a mental system. As we discuss, we think deeply. So they reach deeper levels of the mental system, intellectual system. And then the third one is, means we should have an attitude of compassion, sympathy towards those who are interested in spiritual ideas, spiritual life. We should not have a contemptuous attitude or very complacent attitude. Oh, we're not interested in spiritual. I won't have anything to. No, should not. If the person is interested and if he expresses a desire to discuss spiritual ideas, you should try to discuss with him, help him. If the person is humble, is also wants to learn spiritual things, then you should not be negligent. Oh, I will speak only with people of my own stage, not others. He is ignorant, I won't care. That is also wrong, and that could also cause problems in spiritual life. So there is a very interesting story. It's a history, part of history. So I will tell you how this works in spiritual life. There was a great poet in the place I am coming from. The place where I am coming from, it was for centuries, it had a great obsession with Sanskrit. Even the local language vernacular was considered to be inferior to Sanskrit. So those who wrote poems in Sanskrit were considered to be the real poets. Those who wrote poems in the vernacular was considered to be half poets. So the king had a huge assemblage of 19 great outstanding poets. All these 19 poets are well known. One of them wrote also in the vernacular. So he was called Ardhagavi, means half poet. So that it is in history is known as the assembly of 18 and half poets. It's called Padinetrakal, the assembly of 18 and half poets. The 19th one was called half poet because I showed Swami Vedananda a YouTube, an internet description of that famous assembly. It's a historical fact. They lived in the 13th century in the kingdom, the state I'm coming from in India, Kerala. So, the 19th poet wrote in the vernacular, so he was called half poet. Okay, now, there was one outstanding poet, his name was Narayana Bhattadari. He is the author of the Narayaniam. He had written extensively in Vyakarana, Mimamsa, Vedanta and so on. But he was well known for his famous devotional poem, which has been translated by Swami Tattwamayananda, the Vice President, into English. You can get the book in our bookstore. So this man was so haughty, so proud, so of his poetic, philosophical scholarship. So once it so happened, another poet, this humble man, who knew Sanskrit well, who wrote a poem in the vernacular, approached this great scholar, could you correct my poetical work? Would you have a comment? Then he said, oh, it's in the vernacular. You ask somebody else. You don't bother me about this vernacular. Now the point is, this man had a history, this Sanskrit poet, the great poet, this haughty man. He was a patient of rheumatism. So his name was Narayana Bhattadari. So another great saint had advised him to write a book called The Life of Sri Krishna. Condensation of Bhagavata Purana. So he wrote a big poem of 1000 verses. He called Narayaniam. You can buy in our bookstore, you can find his life history. He lived in 16th century in India. So this man, as he started writing this devotional poem, he was cured of his rheumatism. When he reached the 1000th verse, he was completely cured. Okay, so that was his history. But when he told the humble vernacular poet, oh, you are showing this vernacular poem to me, I have no time for it. That night his rheumatism returned. Then of course, as a great devotee, he was a great devotee, of course, he felt an intuition. They say he got a divine voice. I have more respect for that poor poet's devotion than to your grammatical scholarship, your scholarship in grammar. Then he understood his mistake and he approached him, apologized and corrected his vernacular poem, so his rheumatism vanished. So what I mean to say, you see, this man expressed his, not contempt, his indifference towards another spiritual seeker who was not so scholarly as he. So if a devotee of God shows an attitude of contempt for another genuine devotee, then your devotion, your spiritual life also gets disturbed. So of course you won't be lost, but because you are a true seeker, you will get an opportunity to correct yourself. That's the difference between a spiritual seeker and others. You will be able to know your own mistake. You will be able to throw the flashlight into your own mind. That's what happens to a sincere spiritual seeker. So that's the third attitude. Of course, yeah, that's it. This is the Prema, Maitri, Kripa, Upeksha. 4 attitudes, not 5, but 4. The fourth one is indifference. There are people whose words, whose association, whose company may have a disturbing effect on your own spiritual life. See what you consider to be sacred, genuine. Somebody tells, there are some very wonderful people with strong negative temperament and very persuasive, very powerful personalities. They can, if you are not strong enough, they can disturb your mind if you are not fully convinced of your own idea. That's why Strong determination is necessary along with goodness. A devotee of God cannot be a weakling. You should have a strong, determined mind, mental strength is needed for a devotee. Then only you will be able to develop this filtering mechanism. That will be a good armor plate. You should not antagonize, because that will again disturb your mind. You should not befriend. You just keep a indifferent attitude. You should once a person practices, does some spiritual practice, you'll be surprised. You will develop a peculiar spiritual faculty, and that will help you to discern these wrong negative associations and remain immune to their influences. Once a person starts sincere prayers, sincere reading scriptures and contemplation, then for some time you may be deluded, you may be influenced, but you go back to your home and think, then suddenly you find, that fellow was he appeared to be a very smart, clever fellow, but he was absolute, what he said is absolute rubbish. This conviction will come to you, and that's a filtering mechanism begins to operate. And you are able to filter out all wrong ideas, wrong associations. This is a natural development. You find even people without any scriptural training or understanding or intellectual achievements, you find some great devotees. If you ask them about Vedanta, they don't know much. You ask them about any history, they don't know. But they will have a peculiar wisdom, a peculiar kind of mental maturity that may be even superior to the highly rational faculties of great intellectuals. I have seen this some people with sincere devotion. They have a natural way of remaining immune to negative ideas. You may talk to them, but you find they are not affected by it. After some time, this clever fellow with the wrong ideas may think, he is very clever. But the other fellow has a deeper a peculiar kind of subtle maturity of mind. That keeps him immune to all this. And this happens when you develop any spiritual practice, in any tradition. I've seen people belonging to Hindu, Christian, Buddhist, different spiritual traditions, sincere devotees, sincerely. They go to the church, the Sabbath, or they do their reading in their own way, and they develop a peculiar kind of mental, spiritual maturity, a kind of immunity, as if they had taken a medicine that their poison doesn't enter their system. How does it happen? So, but this peculiar faculty or remaining immune, what you call spiritual filtering mechanism, you cannot develop through psychological studies or analysis or nothing. It's an internal, it's part of our evolution. And I can tell you, I won't name, I've seen some people in San Francisco who are well known for their dullness and their lack of intellectual things, but extreme kind of spiritual maturity. How do you find that? So, spiritual maturity, spiritual sensitivity, it develops independently of intellectual analysis, rational analysis. There are very, very enlightened, well-educated people who don't have this maturity. Very gullible, very naive. And there are people who have this knack of remaining immune to negative ideas, because their mind develops a peculiar faculty of remaining immune to wrong ideas, the effects of wrong associations. They may not have much education, you find it. So, where does it come from? It comes from another source. That's what you find in the conversation between two great poets. One poet is one of the greatest names in India's Sanskrit, the history of Sanskrit literature in India, Narayana. He has written outstanding books which are still being studied, Mimamsa, Vyakarana and so on. He was supposed to be a far greater grammarian than Bhattacharya Dikshita, who came to see him, but they had passed away. Such an outstanding intellect. But he did not have the natural spiritual faculty of the humble poet who approached him for correcting his vernacular poem. But the contentious attitude overturned his life as a whole. So how do you explain this? So when you enter spiritual life, you start playing by a different set of rules. Those rules are different from the rules that dominate, that operate in our everyday secular life. That's okay. So, okay.
Next short question, Rod. You gave a story earlier about the king who, after he found his heir, you said his eldest son was his heir, he gave his kingdom away and then he went to the forest to become a sage. And then when he saw the attack happen with the deer drowning, his compassion came in and he saved the deer. So he allowed his compassion in the way to get in the way of his spiritual goal. So my question is, so that delayed his advancement towards moksha, and he had to get reborn and die again. So it cost him something.
Compassion should not have a binding effect on our system. Compassion should not take us away from our sense of spiritual goal. In his case, for some time, for a short time, it caused deviation. So when we show our compassion, sympathy to his fellow spiritual seekers, it should not take us away from our own spiritual path. The king could have expressed his sympathy without allowing that to take him away from his own spiritual path. That's what really happened. So it actually took him away from the very central spiritual path for which he left his own children or grandchildren in the palace.
But you said he waited until his heir was ready. Like he didn't just abandon his kingdom. He was able to pass on his kingdom to his son.
Yeah.
Meaning he fulfilled his duty as a
king. After that only he left his kingdom. The central point here is, if a king if he simply leaves one day without looking after his kingdom, everything, he won't be doing his duty. He can do that if he's a Buddha. But Jadabharata is not a Buddha. He was a spiritual seeker. Buddha was a higher person, so he could leave everything behind. But this king Jadabharata, what happened to him, though he left his kingdom for a higher spiritual goal, he happened to forget that very spiritual goal for which he renounced everything by showing sympathy with attachment. So sympathy should be shown without that obsessive attachment. That's what we call raga, obsessive attachment. So that kind of sympathy with obsessive attachment can take one away from the spiritual path. But here you are showing compassion to somebody who is interested in spiritual life, and your discussion with them, spiritual topics, becomes part of your own spiritual sadhana, spiritual practice. That's what it is. A spiritual practice. Discussing spiritual ideas with fellow spiritual seekers or others who are interested in knowing more about spiritual subjects, in itself is a kind of spiritual practice. So any way of mind connecting with spiritual ideas becomes a spiritual practice, because it helps you to go deeper into the spiritual ideas. That's it.
Swami, it was the attachment that detracted him, right? It wasn't the compassion.
It was compassion, but also eventually he might have forgotten his spiritual path. It could happen at one stage or other.
Through the compassion?
Well, when he watched the mother deer jumping across the stream and dying and falling dead in the water, and then the little baby deer also floating in the water.
Right.
So as a human being, he felt a great sympathy for the little animal and he saved it. That's a great thing to do.
Right.
And then the animal grew up in the hermitage. In course of time, what happened? He assumed that he is the one who protects the animal. Without him, it will be unprotected. It may be killed by other wild animals. That is where he crossed the.
So he took responsibility for this animal.
Yeah.
Rather than just saving him, providing for him, and then releasing it.
He could have taken responsibility, nothing wrong in it, but that should have been done without deviating without losing sight of his own spiritual goal. Anything that makes, he could have done it without losing sight of his own spiritual goal. For example, showing sympathy and protecting the animal growing up in the hermitage could have been done as part of his own spiritual sadhana. Okay. So even the most ordinary secular duty and work can be done with a spiritual attitude. In his case, though he was a great man, still for some time he might have forgotten at the last moment when he was dying, he must have forgotten even the act of protecting the animal could have been done without considering as something different from spiritual duty. Even that itself can be a spiritual duty. That's why even any kind of work could be done, any kind of secular work even could be done as a spiritual work. We can spiritualize even the most ordinary secular work. Then what happens, you are able to do that work without losing sight of the spiritual work.
So, Amiji, it sounds like you're saying attachment is forgetting who we are.
Yeah, that's what it is. Attachment is nothing but something that takes you away from the spiritual path, forgetting. Yeah. That's why even the most ordinary secular work, which we consider to be somewhat different and distinct from spiritual work, can be done as a spiritual work. Then you are able to do it, but you are also able to keep yourself in sight of the spiritual work. Yes, I do. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tatsat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.